There was a small little company that reached out to the Third Reich and said, hey, we need 150 participants for our clinical trial. The Nazi regime shipped 150 healthy Jewish women to this pharmaceutical company to test its products.
Holy evil, Batman. A major pharmaceutical company, of which you've probably used their products, asked the Nazis for people to use in their drug trials. Spoiler alert, they all died. This is shocking. Welcome back to the JP Reacts channel, my beautiful freedom-loving friend, where we like to call out the lies, hypocrisy, and corruption of tyrants, shine the light of awareness on woke absurdities, and highlight the amazing work of other freedom fighters. Hot off the presses. I mean, if you thought pharmaceutical companies were evil, you are completely wrong. They are more evil than you thought. On the latest episode of Joe Rogan's podcast, he had on the owner of Ways to Well, Brigham Buhler. Now, personally, I've worked with Ways to Well for years now. I've met Brigham in person. Amazing dude, incredibly informed about the pharmaceutical industry because he used to work in it. So what he and Joe Rogan are talking about absolutely shocked me. I'm going to show you a piece of the podcast. We're going to talk about it along the way. And just for context, the reason why they start talking about this is Rogan asked Brigham about the latest FDA ban on peptides, these natural amino acid sequences that are extremely helpful, can be extremely healing. I've used a number of peptides. So Rogan is out to understand, like, why would they ban something that is good for people that doesn't have negative side effects? So that's the context of the conversation. Get ready to be disturbed. Let's dig in.
Let's explain it, because there is no reason why they would be banning these things other than for their own profit.
You got it. You get the gist of it.
That's the only reason. So there is no danger that these things are causing. There's no public health concern. There's no people dropping dead. But meanwhile, people are...
Usually things that are safe and effective have a very positive health benefit of people dying suddenly. So I think Rogan is obviously misinformed.
are dropping dead from the ones that they have sanctioned.
Yeah, and so I like to tell people what you're seeing is a symptom of a disease. And the same thing we do in healthcare. We don't talk about the symptoms. We don't treat this. We unfortunately do treat the symptom and not the root cause of the disease. And so to diagnose what the real issue is, we've got to dig a little deeper into the history and what's going on there. And it's a pretty insidious disease, and it's spread throughout all of the government. And that disease is private industry and its influence on the federal government and the decisions they make.
No, what a conspiracy theory. The private industry pharmaceutical companies influence the government? For the record, I do not believe a word of this so far. Oh.
And we're going to talk a little bit about large language models later in the future of what I think healthcare is. But one of the critiques of large language models is it's only as good as the data you put in. And I would argue that humanity is no different. It is only as good as the data that you put in. And so if the federal government and the FDA is going to allow an open door policy with big pharma, they're going to come to the conclusions and decisions and policies that benefit big pharma.
Wouldn't they come to the conclusions and have policies that benefit the human, the patient? That's, again, what? These two conspiracy theorists, I don't understand why they're not locked up in our free and fair democracy here.
And so if we take a little walk through history, you'll see time and time again how this has happened. So I'm going to jump way back first, if you're good with this. So you go way back. There was a small little company that reached out to the Third Reich and said, hey, we need 150 participants for our clinical trial. The Nazi regime shipped 150 healthy Jewish women to this pharmaceutical company.
So stop right there for a second. A drug company that makes medications to keep people alive, to keep people healthy, was working with the Nazis. What's their track record on preserving and protecting human life? I don't know. Haven't looked into it, but would you want to have your life literally depending on a drug company that was working with the Nazis. And what happens to these participants is shocking.
To test its products. Literally, within 6 months, there's letters back to the Third Reich from this pharmaceutical company saying, "Thank you so much for your cooperation. The women arrived in great health and working order. Unfortunately, none of them made it through the initial phases of our trial. They killed 150 women."
That sounds like a very safe and effective medication, whatever they were trying on the 150 women that probably just died from other causes, I'd imagine.
"We kindly request that you send us another 150 women." That little company became Bayer.
Bayer, your aspirin, things you're getting over the counter. Wow, they were not only literally killing people, but just like 100% of the volunteers, which I mean, that's a minimal number. Just 100% of everybody in the clinical trial died. But they were also working with the Nazis. Is that evil? You tell me. Let's hear more.
Which is now a mega pharmaceutical company. And I say that because, that was the 50s. It would have changed.
Makes a correction later that it was the 40s. Just calm down. Okay, just calm down.
By now, that was forever ago, right? The world's a different place. We would never allow that today. Jump forward post-World War II. I talked about this on RFK's podcast. Eisenhower had that.
Can I pause there? You said it was the 50s. It couldn't have been the 50s.
Well, the 40s, sorry. Okay. And so jump forward to...
We can completely discredit this whole conversation because he made a mistake and corrected the mistake, but these guys deserve to be completely discredited. By the way, they're both bald. Do you think they're like white supremacists? The Nazis were. No, the Nazis, I think they were.
So jump forward to Eisenhower's speech, his famous speech about the military-industrial complex. What a lot of people don't realize is there was a second half to that speech where Eisenhower warned the American people about the medical industrial complex. He warned that if we allow private industry to control, monopolize, and profiteer off of health and healthcare, that they will silo innovation, stifle innovation, and capitalize and monetize innovation.
Which, by the way, if you haven't listened to that Eisenhower speech that he's referencing, I'll look it up on YouTube or Rumble. Just type in Eisenhower military industrial complex speech. And then also, that's probably just clipped. So also type in Eisenhower medical industrial complex speech. But the part about the military-industrial complex, as Eisenhower was leaving office, he was warning Americans about what could happen, what will happen with the military-industrial complex. And I just found this out today, he did the same thing with a medical-industrial complex. Well worth a watch, in my opinion.
And I would argue that's 100% what we've seen, and it's continuing. So, and the reason I want to walk the public through this is because to understand what's going on, you've got to see the history of how it's happened. Now you jump forward to the 80s.
A drug company that still exists, does major business in the U.S. alone. It's handing out medications to people. People are putting trust in it. But there's just, that little bit of tarnish on its records. Oh, you were getting participants for your clinical trials from the Nazis, and by the way, 100% of those participants died, but you were working with the Nazis and literally killing people, working with an organization that kills people, and they're giving you people to kill. How are they still able to operate? And of course, the answer to that question is because of the medical industrial complex, which now I think is a good time to ponder this quick question. How did the medical industry as we know it start? Well, take a look at this very quick clip. Spoiler alert, it involves the Rockefellers.
1872, Rockefeller bought up, shut down, or bankrupt 90% of the oil companies. Our good old Constitution came into place, and in 1911, the Supreme Court found Rockefeller in violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act and split Standard Oil into 34 independent companies. So they said, you can't have the monopoly on this, you're done. You think that changed who he was? No. He promised to bankrupt America. At that very same time, they were learning how to turn petrochemicals, exactly what he had at his fingertips with the oil, into pharmaceuticals. Now, John D. Rockefeller's biggest threat was natural health. So what does he do? Being the businessman he is, he donates money to the medical schools because he wants to control. And what do you do when you want to control someone? You give him money. And then he hired a guy by the name of Flexner to study the school's curriculum, to figure out what they were teaching everybody, and to persuade the government to establish allopathic medicine, which used the unnatural substances to treat diseases. This is how Western medicine was founded.
Whoa, the medical industry was founded by Rockefeller with an agenda of suppressing natural health modalities while using chemicals to not improve health, but to treat diseases. Well, that's a rather shaky foundation to have something very important on. But nonetheless, knowing is half the battle. Now we know.
Time and time again, when Big Pharma has had an opportunity to choose left or right, over and over again, they have chose profits over patient outcomes. So 1980s, Bayer launches a hemophilia drug. They inadvertentently contaminate thousands of specimens with HIV. They know that.
Whoops, it's just a happy accident. It's, kind of like food poisoning. Occasionally it happens like, oh, you got, somehow a lot of HIV got in there. Now you're infected with HIV. So you're welcome for the help.
They've contaminated specimens with HIV, this drug with HIV virus. What do? They have a decision, destroy all of it or ship it to the public anyway. They shipped it into third world countries, Africa and Asian markets, and infected 20,000 people with the HIV virus.
What?
This is the 80s when it was a death sentence. And so I say that to set the groundwork for why would they ban peptides?
Look at this from this article. A division of the pharmaceutical company Bayer sold millions of dollars of blood clotting medicine for hemophiliacs, medicine that carried a high risk of transmitting AIDS to Asia and Latin America in the mid-1980s while selling a new, safer product in the West, according to documents obtained by the New York Times. Holy shit.
Holy shit is a correct assessment of this.
To everything I referenced, Jamie, because this was something last time, I am going to mention a lot of controversial stuff. So I've listed reference after reference after reference on the Ways to Well website. Anything that I reference will be on there as well.
And just so you have it, if you want these references for yourself, here you can see the Ways to Well website, which is ways2well.com. Ways, the number 2, well.com. And again, I've worked with this company for years on my own health optimization. I've met Brigham in person, and this information he shares is absolutely appalling. Being appalled by it is the healthy response. When will the pharmaceutical companies be held responsible, and who will hold them responsible? I don't know, but I can tell you who won't hold them responsible. The government, the FDA, but who has the potential to hold them responsible? I would dare say it's weirdos like you and I. We saw what happened with the Bud Light boycott. That was the individuals deciding to hold a company responsible. I would dare say the power is not in our hands. Trying to outsource our power to the FDA or other 3-letter agencies to protect us. Good luck on that. They do some good stuff for sure, but also, case in point with this, they do some nefarious things. So with that said, I can also tell you this entire podcast with Brigham Buhler on Joe Rogan, it is well worth a listen to. And also Brigham's first appearance on Joe Rogan, which was around a year ago. You can look it up. That was fantastic as well. I have never seen anyone more informed with more details and nuances about the pharmaceutical corruption and its negative impact on human life. So I appreciate you watching. I'll see you next time. But before that, a special message. Have you ever thought, well, health insurance seems necessary, but it also really seems like a scam? You have to pay expensive premiums, and the amount that you have to pay for health insurance is based on the common population of sick people requiring a lot of medical care very regularly. And then when you do finally use your health insurance, they fight you on it. They try not to pay the bill, say that's not covered. And it seems like a scam. And if you're someone like me, I take care of my health, so I'm healthy, therefore my medical costs aren't that high. I still have to pay a large amount each month because my premium is based on a sick population using doctors often. I think there can be a better way. And that better way is finally here, Crowd Health. Crowd Health is basically decentralized healthcare that takes the power out of the hands of the insurance companies and hands it back to the people where it belongs. It works in a simple way where your healthcare costs are covered without having to overpay. It's simple. You become a member and pay a low monthly fee to Crowd Health. When you do have to go to your doctor or you have an emergency, you then submit your bills to Crowd Health, and Crowd Health covers your bills quickly, simply, and easily. It's like decentralized crowdsourcing for healthcare. So instead of like normal health insurance where your premiums have you paying for people that don't take much self-responsibility for their health, therefore they have a lot of medical costs, just go to joincrowdhealth.com/JPReacts and become a member today. Once again, if you want to take your power back from the insurance companies and the whole medical mafia, yet still have healthcare coverage, then go to joincrowdhealth.com/JPReacts and become a member today.